New World just wrapped up its open beta for the upcoming Aeternum update, and in this video, I want to share with you my thoughts on what's changed, whether it's any good, and if it's worth playing New World Aeternum when the update goes live on October 15th. Now, there still seems to be quite a bit of confusion on what exactly New World Aeternum is, mainly coming from people who have previously played New World on PC. So before we jump into my thoughts on the game, let's just briefly recap on what is happening. In its simplest form, New World Aeternum is an update for New World. Unlike with the Brimstone Sands and Rise of the Angry Earth expansions, New World Aeternum doesn't add any new zones or any new weapons to the game, but what it does add, hopefully, is a brand new player base in the form of Xbox and PlayStation 5 players. New World Aeternum is currently available for pre-order on both Xbox and PlayStation stores for $60, and on October 15th, I believe you'll also be able to purchase it on Steam, again for that $60 price tag. However, if you've previously purchased New World on Steam, you do get this update for free. But there are parts of the update, like the new 10-person raid, that require you to be level 65. And if you want to get to level 65, you will need the Rise of the Angry Earth DLC from last year, as without it, the level cap remains at 60. So console players will get everything New World Aeternum has to offer, and PC players will get everything too, provided they own New World and the previous expansion. But if they don't, they can still play the update, just not the new max level stuff. And they still won't have access to the mount, as that also requires the DLC. One of the questions I see many PC players asking is, can I play New World Aeternum on my old character, or is there going to be a wipe? The answer is yes. You can still play New World Aeternum with your old character, but Amazon are adding brand new fresh start servers on October 15th for new players and those of you who want that wiped server experience. These servers will be transfer locked, meaning you cannot move your old characters into them. Only new characters can be made on these servers, so everything here will effectively be reset. You'll play from level 1 with no gold, no weapon mastery, etc. But you will have access to any skins you own, as those are account bound. Both these fresh start servers and the older legacy servers will have cross-platform enabled from October 15th onwards, meaning Xbox, PS5, and PC players can all play together, but Amazon has confirmed there will be some dedicated servers that are only for PS5 players, and there will be some dedicated servers that are only for Xbox players. Also, it's worth mentioning that whilst New World Aeternum will support crossplay, it will not support cross-progression. So if you played on PC in the past and you want to play on console going forward, you will not be able to play your PC character on a console or vice versa. Your purchase of New World does not carry over to either platform. So you'll have to buy New World Aeternum on Xbox or PS5 if you want to play on either Xbox or PS5. Alright, so with those questions out the way, let's actually talk about my impressions from playing the New World Aeternum open beta and what has changed in the game. Upon launching the game, there's now this new flashy cutscene with Captain Thorpe and Father Russo, which sets up the story for how your character arrives on the island of Aeternum. Whilst it is definitely well animated and a nice looking cutscene, it is effectively just an updated version of the previous starting cutscene we had in New World, but with a slightly different narrative, one that makes more sense for the updated main story quest line Amazon has added to the game. As you did in the previous version of New World, the screen then transitions to character creation and introduces the new archetype system Amazon have added. Archetypes offer a way to start the game with a different combination of weapons, which is a good improvement from the everyone has a sword and shield start that New World has had for the past 3 years. They also give you a small boost into 3 different trade skills, 1 gathering, 1 refining, and 1 crafting skill each. This jumpstarts some of your crafting capabilities, allowing you to immediately chop down mature trees, or mine gold ore, smelt steel ingots, etc. Again, I think this is a solid improvement to the new player starting experience and helps with the RPG element of the game. But it is worth mentioning that the archetype choice doesn't mean you're locked into those weapons and crafts, so ultimately, everyone can still use every weapon and max every craft on just 1 character. After choosing an archetype, you then go into character customization for their appearance, and this has also seen some upgrades with some more hairstyles and some less hideous face options. New World's previous character creator was one of the worst I've seen in any game for a long time, so the improvements here were definitely needed. However, the customization is still somewhat lacking compared to titles like Black Desert Online or Throne and Liberty, and there's still no changing your character's height, weight, or musculature. From here, there's an updated version of the tutorial, and then you get to swim for your very first time in New World. I played around with swimming a bit more in the beta, and I learned that it is sadly just an animation that plays when you enter deep enough water. You can swim faster by pressing your dodge button, but there's no stamina associated with swimming, and you can't dive, it doesn't have a trade skill associated with it, and as far as I can tell, there's no content that's been added to the game that exclusively supports the swimming feature, like new islands with resources on them that you can only get via swimming, etc. Nonetheless, swimming is obviously something that should have been in the game from the PC launch, so I'm glad it's finally in the game now. The tutorial continues, and a few more new cutscenes play, which all do look fantastic, and then you wash up on one of two different starting beaches in Aeternum, either Windsward or Monarch's Bluff. From here, you get to see something that Amazon has spent a lot of time adding to the game, and that's the new cinematic storytelling. This features a bunch of new NPCs, like this Aelstrom guy, who are fully voice acted with facial animation, and you also get this zoomed-in, close-up camera effect as your character interacts with them. Throughout all of the main story in New World Aeternum, and even with the side quests, you now get this cinematic storytelling feature as you play the game. Now, how important this is for you as a player is going to vary from person to person. For me, honestly, I really don't care for it. I'm generally somebody who plays multiplayer games for the combat, the mechanics, and the social elements. But obviously, there are going to be a good chunk of gamers out there who play for the storytelling, and Amazon is definitely catering to them with this update. However, my concern is the amount of resources and time spent on this feature could have instead been used on adding some more replayable, rewarding content to the game, something I think it still badly needs. Also, the character models and animation aren't really that great looking when you compare New World Aeternum to titles like Diablo 4 or again, Throne and Liberty. I just don't think Amazon is playing to their strengths with this focus on cinematic storytelling. Social elements and open world exploration are what I consider to be the strongest pillars of the game, and New World Aeternum as an update does not add much to either of these. The new 2D cutscenes are beautiful and well put together though, so unless a major character model overhaul happens, I think these should be the main way Amazon convey New World story going forward. Another big change with New World Aeternum is the overall performance of the game. In the open beta, my frame rate was silky smooth in almost all scenarios, regardless of how many players were around or how many visual effects were firing off. I think a large part of this comes with the optimization they've done for the game to get 4K 60 FPS working on consoles. Now, I didn't get to play in any super graphically intense content like Wars during the beta, but looking at footage of fellow creator Trick, it does seem as though FPS issues are a thing of the past in New World Aeternum. Amazon have also tweaked the running and jumping animation along with the UI. I've seen a bunch of people complain that the jump is too floaty and the UI is too big. Personally, I don't really mind either, but I do wish we would have the feature to reposition the UI. For the longest time, I've wanted to be able to take my teammates' health bars and move them more central to the screen, just to make healing easier. So fingers crossed we'll see that feature at some point in the future. A couple of things you may not immediately notice with New World Aeternum is the increased server capacity and the new sharding technology that they've implemented. During one point in the beta, I traveled to Monarch's Bluff so I could meet up and trade some items with a company member, but due to the town being very busy at that moment, it had been sharded into different layers, meaning I had to join the shard my friend was on in order to be able to see and trade with them. Now, this is a pretty common feature in many other MMOs, but you can effectively switch layers or channels when in a heavily populated area. By doing this, Amazon have given themselves the ability to increase the number of players that can be in one area without lagging the heck out of your game. As a result, we now have a potential server capacity of 4,000 to 4,500 players. Pretty much double what it was during the PC launch of New World in 2021. It's still a far cry from the mega servers that many players have expressed an interest in, which would effectively mean all players on one server, but again, this is undoubtedly an improvement from the previous versions of New World. Finally, the last big thing that I got to try out in New World Aeternum's open beta was the new PvP zone. This is a new area that's been added to the bottom left of Cutlass Keys, which automatically flags you for PvP when you step into it. Now, unlike normal open world PvP, this zone does not allow you to group up with other players. It's instead a free-for-all zone, meaning you can attack and be attacked by members of the same faction, and even members from your own company. Along with this, the zone is packed with lots of gatherable resources like star metal, ironwood, wire fiber, etc. The resources here come in a cursed form and cannot be used for crafting or trading until they are cleansed, which is done by simply walking back outside of the zone. However, if at any point you die to another player whilst in the zone, you'll drop half of your cursed materials on the ground, allowing them to steal it and cleanse the stuff instead. There's also a new PvP currency called doubloons, which are gathered from chests and AI enemies in the zone. And again, these can drop when you die to another player and need to be cleansed via leaving the zone in order to be used. Within the Cutlass Key settlement, there's a new crafting station called the Well of Fortune. You can spend the doubloons we just talked about here in order to buy max gear score weapons, armor, jewelry, along with a bunch of other consumables and crafting materials. There are ways to earn doubloons via non-PvP methods, like quests, but the majority of them will likely be earned by venturing into the PvP zone, and a new item, the Gold Cursed Coconut, which is used for upgrading artifacts to max gear score. This can only be looted in the PvP zone. Now, unfortunately, in the open beta, we were only able to get to level 30, and the zone was designed for level 65 players, so we didn't really get a chance to properly experience it. But I am excited for this area when it goes live, and I think it has a lot of potential as a piece of endgame replayable PvP content, something the game badly needs more of. However, I am concerned that some players will ignore the free-for-all nature of the zone and start teaming with their friends to give themselves an unfair advantage. Something Amazon could do to mitigate this is hiding player names and potentially even skins whilst in the zone. If everyone was called Dangerous Explorer and had the same skin while in the area, it would make it harder for friends to protect each other in fights, as you wouldn't for sure know who was who in the chaos. Obviously, if they both entered the zone at the same time and stay next to each other or use voice chat, they'd be able to nullify some of these precautions, but as it was currently set up in the open beta, I think it's going to be far too easy to team up with other players. Now, this is subject to personal opinion again, and I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about the free-for-all nature of the PvP zone, and whether you think teaming is something we need to be concerned about. Sadly, that was pretty much it from my experiences in the New World Aeternum open beta, at least from the perspective of a still active player who's been playing New World since the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion. There are 2 other pieces of content added in this update, the 10-player raid and the repeatable soul trials, but both of them require you to be level 65 to enter, and as we previously mentioned, the beta caps you at level 30, so there wasn't a chance to play and comment on these. I do think that both of them are sorely needed pieces of content in the game, however. New World has been lacking a proper raid since its release, and endgame solo content is very limited, so hopefully they both end up being fun and rewarding. There are a few other small things worth noting that Aeternum changes. Equipment no longer takes damage, so you don't need to repair things anymore. Arrows and ammo have been removed, so bows, muskets, and blunderbusses no longer need to craft or buy these for the damage boost. And cross-server plus matchmaking have both been introduced to 3v3 Arena and Outpost Rush, which should hopefully balance the number of healers on either side and the general skill level of both teams. Although New World Aeternum mostly improves the game, there are a few things I saw in the beta that make the game worse, in my opinion. The first and most concerning is the addition of an aim lock system in PvP. This mechanic has been working on the live servers for some time now, but only in PvE, so only when you're fighting against the AI. By clicking the middle mouse button or the right analog stick on controller, you can target lock an enemy, effectively removing the need to aim. Whilst this system isn't infallible at longer ranges with weapons like the bow, at close range it makes it almost impossible to miss, and weapons like the blunderbuss become extremely good as a result. Now obviously, many other games that support crossplay provide some kind of aim assist to controller as a way to allow them to stay competitive with mouse and keyboard inputs. My problem with Amazon's implementation of this is that this is an aim assist. It's an aim bot. The game is not assisting you in aiming, it's just straight up aiming for you. This effectively changes the unique action combat nature of New World to tab target combat, and overall I think it removes a lot more from the game than it adds. So I sincerely hope that Amazon goes back to disabling the aim lock feature in PvP as it currently is on live servers and allow it to only work in PvE. Again, regardless of controller or mouse and keyboard input. Another negative of New World Aeternum that's a bit more speculative is the limiting of rewarding endgame activities. Since the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion, the best gear in the game in terms of gear score has been obtainable from crafting, from dungeons, from looting chests, killing enemies in the open world, the PvP rewards track, and from Outpost Rush boxes. So the vast majority of endgame activities in the game. After the New World Aeternum update goes live, the new best gear in the game, again in terms of gear score, will only come from the PvP zone and the 10-player raid. Dungeons, looting chests, the PvP rewards track, Outpost Rush boxes, open world kills, and even crafting will no longer provide you with max gear score items. And from what we can tell, Other than artifacts, it won't be possible to upgrade any of the existing items in the game to the new max gear score of 725. I think this is a bit overkill from Amazon personally. I get wanting to make the raid and PvP the final end game content. Most other MMOs do this as well. But the fact that we can't upgrade any gear from dungeons or crafting, even with upgrade materials that drop from the raid and the PvP zone, it does seem a bit too restrictive to me. New World definitely has more endgame content now than when it launched in 2021, but excluding most of it from these sort of final steps of getting the new max gear score, well, I do think that is going to make the current endgame loop a bit limited and probably quite boring. You've done the raid, you've done the PvP zone for the weekly. There is something to be said about playing for fun, but a lot of players do play for rewards, and if there's only 2 pieces of content that give you the best rewards, most players will simply choose to skip all of the other content that Amazon has spent years adding into the game. It just seems a bit, I don't know, I'm not so sure what they're doing here. It's also worth mentioning that I did experience some bugs in the open beta, nothing game breaking, and thankfully exploits like invincibility, duplicating items and gold, that stuff does seem to be a thing of the past, but my experience in New World Aeternum was certainly not bug-free. To summarize my thoughts on New World Aeternum, I think it's mostly a good update for the game. It doesn't have anywhere near enough content for the nearly 1-year wait PC players have had since the last expansion, but obviously most of the developers' efforts have been spent on simply getting the game to work on console, and to that extent, I think they've done a pretty good job. I spent a little bit of time playing on the PS5, and the game looks and runs well enough in my opinion, though if you look at some YouTube comments on the graphics, not everyone is as impressed. The Reddit for New World, at time of recording, actually looks pretty positive though, but it did when the game first came out on PC as well. If you're coming into New World Aeternum as a first-time player on PC or console, I do genuinely believe it's worth the $60. And before the veteran PC community come in and lambast me for saying so, try this as a thought experiment. Imagine it's 2021 again, and you're launching up New World for the first time. But this time, there's a free transfer button when you see a long queue. You get to choose your starting weapons and trade skill bonuses. There's 15 weapons to choose from instead of 11. Every single NPC is voice acted. The main story quest rewards great XP, and there's a bunch of cool cutscenes with a pretty decent storyline as well. Your FPS is rock solid, even with hundreds of other players on the starting beach and in towns. You can actually swim when you go into the water. Fast travel is effectively free, storage sheds and trading posts are all connected, and you get a mount at level 20 to move around the map even faster. PvP Arena exists from level 20 onwards, and is cross-server, has matchmaking, and provides XP for a PvP rewards track, letting you earn gear and consumables all through PvP. Gathering is still as chill as ever, but you earn bonus materials that you can trade in for additional gathering XP, letting you level up your logging 5 times faster. There's a new gear set system, allowing you to switch loadouts on the fly. You now have 8 endgame dungeons to choose from instead of 2, and they support cross-server with a group finder, and you don't need keys to enter. You have repeatable endgame soul trials, a 20-person boss fight, a 10-person raid with 3 different bosses, and a PvP zone with PvP currency. If you tell me that all of that, on top of what is already the baseline fun and wonder that you get from playing New World, regardless of when it came out, if you tell me that all of that is not worth the $60, I think you have some insanely high expectations in gaming. But that is from the new player's perspective. If you're somebody who's played New World since the last expansion, The Rise of the Angry Earth, I sadly think there's not much in this update for the returning player, unless you're fine with starting over on a new character on the Fresh Start servers. So that's how I'm going to wrap up this video. If you're a new player, go for it. It is absolutely worth it. I would definitely recommend New World Aeternum. Even if the endgame is still far from perfect, there's plenty of game to be had there for the price that it's at. Now, if you're a returning player, I strongly suggest the Fresh Start servers and seeing if the game feels any better for you. As I mentioned at the start, you can still get the New World Aeternum update and play up to level 60 without needing to buy the expansion from last year. By the time you get to that point, you'll know whether it's worth, whether you want to give Amazon any more of your money or not. Now, I do definitely have concerns about what New World will look like post Aeternum launch. We've seen spikes in player numbers for previous Fresh Start servers and expansions, but within a few months, the player count does drop quite dramatically. I guess this is common for many games out there. Updates bring in players, they get bored, they leave, they come back for the next update, but I've always felt like the lows in New World are really low. Amazon has said that they'll be sharing a 2025 roadmap with us sometime after New World Aeternum's launch, but after the previous roadmap fiasco, it's hard for me to get too excited about this. They've also seemingly made the decision to stop New World Database from pulling player count numbers to display on their website. This is a move that doesn't fill me with confidence for the game's future post Aeternum launch. Maybe this is a mandate of Sony or Xbox or some console, but yeah, not being, just effectively hiding the player numbers. Again, not a great sign for the game when they do stuff like that. Nonetheless, I've been here for every New World update, and I'll definitely be here for this one as well. So if you want any further news on the game, updates, guides, tips, and tricks, consider subscribing and pop into the Twitch channel and say hi. I'm going to be streaming New World Aeternum pretty much every day from the launch of October 15th. I'll put a link in the description down below. You can go find the Twitch channel there. As always, friends, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll catch you guys all in the next video.